Okay. Well, welcome all to RE Pod 6. I did have to check before to know the number. It's been a while since our last one. Apologies, life has been moving and grooving.
It really
38
has.
away from 44. I'm starting to think 44 is going to be like the finale. I don't know. We have like
Whoa!
someone crazy. Well, of season
Like,
one.
okay, okay, dude. If we're
we're
doing,
we're done forever.
like, are you breaking up with me?
Enjoy them because we only have 38 more.
I start
And
showing
then
up every
fucking
time, just
over
being like,
it.
okay, so for our 37th, like, um, I mean, 44 for one season. At the rate we're going, that first season is literally gonna last like years.
Yeah,
I don't know if
maybe.
we need to put things in boxes. I don't know if we want. I think it's just 44 is gonna be special,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that.
Well, let's get into it.
Yeah.
I mean, where do we start? Maybe the conference,
Sure. Yeah. I was
or
actually
even
thinking,
before. Yeah, riff, go for it.
well, like before we jumped on, I was just like, obviously the conference makes sense. And also, like, I think it's still really landing. Kind
Mm.
of like when we spoke after you were at your retreat, you
Yeah.
know, decades ago at this point. Like it just there has been so much that has been happening in my world in like there always is, but in particular, I feel like this last 4 week chunk has just been like boom, boom, like timeline jumping. Yeah. Like a week ago, I was in Paris, you
Crazy.
know? Yeah. And then, yeah, no, a week ago tomorrow is when I got back to Amsterdam and then the conference. Um, but it was incredible. And it was just like, so for me, one of the biggest like overall takeaways, I guess for anybody listening who has no idea what conference we're talking about, I was just at the interdisciplinary conference
You got
on
this.
psychedelic research. Um, yeah, which happens every 2 years just outside of Amsterdam. And it was the first conference I've ever been to in my life on anything. Um,
I forgot that. That's crazy.
yeah,
What a
uh-huh.
start.
I
What a
know, right?
start.
I was like, okay, this is if we're gonna get into like a conference kind of scene, like
Yeah,
doing
we're
it,
gonna do
yeah,
it.
yeah, and it set a bar for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, like one of the path that I have been on, right, in my own life and in particular with psychedelics has been much more kind of the like avant-garde outside of the scientific community, basically. Sitting ceremonies in the jungle with, indigenous leaders, things like that, like kind of just more of the spiritual, I don't really like the word alternative because it's actually the
The
original
main.
use of these, you're right. But as far as like the main kind of American academic brain goes, it would be considered alternative. And for me, my journey has been so, I guess like deep in that spiritual in those spiritual realms in different with different energies, entities, realms, spirits, things like that. Like I've for a long time I held the scientific at a distance. Not that I didn't think it was like right or valid or real or that the research, wasn't important, but it for me there was so much that from what I saw in the more scientific communities that like just didn't leave any room for the divine, for the indigenous,
Yeah.
for, it was just such a quantified, like, how do we break down something that to me is completely like heart and human centered. And it
Yeah.
just seemed like people were trying to be like, well, yeah, how do we take ayahuasca and put it into a pill? Or like how do we do the like hold ceremony in like a sterile clinical setting? And it just to me it just didn't feel right. Not to say that it was wrong, but for me it didn't feel right. And what I've also been seeing just in my own heart for a long time is that the true path forward is the bridging of all of these worlds, right? It is the scientific, the lab, the understanding of things kind of in that more academic way, and bridging that with the indigenous knowledge, with the plant medicines that have existed for a really long time, and holding room for the spiritual and the sacred. Um, And so much of what I saw people talking about at this conference was that, that they're doing trials for, I believe it's psilocybin, but don't quote me on that, at the University of Exeter right now. And they have, they're like actively bringing shamanism into those trials. They're actively consulting indigenous people on like, well, what happens if like a spiritual, like a dark entity shows up in this process? And it's, the academics are like, we don't know, like we've never considered that. But the fact that they're having those conversations, that they're talking about like how to create, like how to clear energy in a space before you hold a setting or a ceremony, even if it is in like a lab setting or in a hospital. It's like these conversations are being had about how, what the responsibility is and how we kind of connect these worlds. And that to me was like the biggest, I don't, it's not necessarily like reassurance isn't the right word, because I've known that it is what needs to come and I
Yeah.
haven't questioned that. But it's just like seeing it and seeing people who come from all of these different backgrounds, right? There was a man there named Simon Ruffle, I think is how you pronounce it. It's spelled like
Hmm.
Ruffle, but I think he said Ruffle. And he had been doing his PhD in psychedelics, right? And he had
Mhm.
like gone to the Amazon and was basically like sciencing like ayahuasca for a long time, and would sit in these ceremonies. And a lot of the, indigenous people that he was working with would be like talking to him about how he kind of needed to like connect with the spirits because the spirits were trying to connect with him. And he was
Hmm.
just kind of like, yeah, 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 okay. He was like, sure. And he was still kind of like quantifying that and trying to like put it down. And
This
then
is the
finally,
eighth time they've told me that the spirits are trying to connect.
right, like, this is so interesting. Like, let me turn this into an academic paper. And then eventually, like, he started having the experiences and making contact with those,
Wow.
you know,
Yeah.
energies. And he's like broken. So now he's training in shamanism. But he's
Wow.
still in the world of academia. Right. And so
Beautiful.
he's just there. And I'm like, God, what a fascinating life. Because it's like, how do you bring, once you understand that, how do you walk back into Cambridge or wherever it is that he's studying and just be like, so I know we've been talking about like, neurons and nuclei and whatever, but also like a tree frog just spoke to me and told me blah blah, like, so it's this, yeah. And I'm just like fascinated to see where it goes. And everybody who's working in it and on it has such unique perspectives of what has brought them to the place where they're realizing that there needs to be that bridging of a massive gap. But it's like it's happening, and the conversations are being had, and people talking about what does training facilitators even look like, and how do we do that in a way that is grounded in indigenous lineage while also honoring Western laws and you know Western upbringings and backgrounds and trauma and all of it. And the amount of people whose answer was just like, we still don't know. And
Hmm.
that, it's like that's the path that we're carving right now, is just being
Yeah.
like, everyone is aware of the fact that this needs to be happening. And we're all like, okay, so we're the stewards of figuring this out. How do, okay, we're going to do our best.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That was kind of, I mean, not even kind of, that was the inspiration for Ari. It was like,
Yeah.
these questions aren't new, and I'm relatively new to this space. I've been dabbling in the psychedelic realm for like 10 years, and in the academic sense, maybe like 4 or 5, but being at these conferences over and over and hearing the same questions, and it's important that we ask the question. That's the start, but there were never answers. It was like question and question and question, and that is important. We need to ask the questions, but at a certain point, and this doesn't necessarily come natural to academia because they're paid to ask the questions and then research and then ask more questions. Like that's how the cycle goes. But at a certain point, we do need answers, and so that's, I think Ari is one of the answers. There's so many, and they all have to exist in some
Right.
form or another because there's so many different routes and so many different people and psychedelics and energies. And yeah, we need a little something for everyone. But I'm so happy that you It sounds like you enjoyed it. Did you enjoy
I
it?
did.
Yeah.
I was like, I was tired in a way that I haven't been tired in a really long
Oh
time.
yeah.
And I think that would have been the case even if I had a restful like week leading up to it. But the fact that I literally went from like 4 days in Paris, seeing my sister, seeing all of these people who just showed up, like the most
Yeah.
divine humans that could have appeared on my path, were just like, I just happened to be in Paris. I'm like, great.
Hmm.
Um, and just going nonstop, and then literally like basically getting off the train Wednesday night, having a very full Wednesday night as well. And then I was up until like 1 a.m. with a friend on Wednesday night, and then was up at like 6:45 the next morning to just be like, okay, we're going into the conference. So like every day I was just
Crazy.
like, yeah, like we're in this like, I don't know, just kind of cosmic soup of information and exhaustion, you
Yeah.
know? Um, yeah.
They are exhausting. Also, it's funny to say that I'm not an extrovert because I think I do these days present as such, but
Hmm.
sometimes out of necessity. I'm truly not. Like, that does
Yeah.
not energize me. A conference does not. I can
Maybe.
enjoy it, but it does not fill my cup in any
Yeah.
way. I think even just like being around that many people, let alone like speaking to them and like of any conference to be at, I'm grateful to attend psychedelic ones where it's like you have less of the kind of mask. Actually, that's not true. It's just a different mask.
Yeah.
And some people come in no mask at all, and then you talk to them, and you can kind of see it in their eyes. And I try to talk to those people. I'm like,
Yeah.
why are you here? You know, let's talk. Let's
Yeah.
get beyond the this trial is doing whatever. You know, I don't care. I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, let's talk about you and let's talk about me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm curious what that was like for you in terms of like the interactions,
Yeah. I mean, as somebody who is hardcore on the introvert side of things, but does
which is
has
also so
trained,
funny to
I
hear.
know.
Yeah,
Well, because I've trained myself really well, which was like a trauma response when I was
the
younger, and now it's
mask.
just
Yeah,
yeah, but like I mean, I guess where I'm at now, right, is that I'm just in full trust at all times that that I am where I need to be at all times,
yeah,
and that the people that I'm meant to talk to and meet appear at all times. And so being at a conference, right, like I think a few years ago I would have had some voice in the back of my mind being like, you're supposed to be going out of your way to like meet people or whatever. And this, being who I am now, I just kind of was like, no, like I'm here. I'm gonna go to the talks and the things that interest me, and I'm completely open to any and all aligned interaction, right? But there's no part of me feels the need to force anything.
yeah,
And so I mean, every day I was meeting probably half a dozen plus people between, some of them just being very brief interactions, and then some people just like getting right into the guts and the grit of
yeah.
everything. Um, but I was speaking to someone in the second half of the second day, and they had asked me about, yeah, the type of people that I had met. And I basically was like, and she's a psychedelic assisted therapist, American by birth, but has lived in the UK for 12 years. And she's
Wow,
also a hypnotherapist and like
cool.
basically, and an artist, and kind of had this beautiful breadth of like, academic training in like, had
Yeah,
her psychology degree and all of that, but then also was, yeah, in the arts and in hypnotherapy, which is, you know within classic, I guess, therapy, but also kind of avant-garde in some ways. And I basically was like, honestly, like most of the people that I've spoken to until you have been kind of more of the like, outside of the system people, a lot of people
yeah.
that had just kind of approached me, or that I had approached, who were just like psychonauts on their journey of being like, yeah, we're just kind of figuring this out, and doing well. That's not even the first person that I spoke to just finished 11 years of med school in,
Wow.
yeah, in
Yeah.
Canada. And he's been on his own journey with psychedelics for a while. But basically was like, I want to be one of the first people that's using these
Mm.
medicines in more of the like clinical setting. But like, he, as like an energy, it was wild because it was like he was like med school doctor, right? But he was
Yeah.
also just this like very like yeah, I like to explore psychedelics and drugs and do all, like just this very outgoing kind of like, you wouldn't think of him as like Dr.
Yeah.
Human, I guess.
Doctor
Um,
Human,
yeah.
yeah.
um, but yeah, I was like, I don't know, it was more the people who were kind of there on their own accord for that deep interest and thing that had like kind of pulled them from something beyond, I guess, that
Yeah.
I was interacting with, rather than the people that were like in more of the corporate what have
Yeah.
you. um but then speaking to some of the people, I spoke to one Irish woman who used to work for Compass,
Mm.
which is, for those who don't know, they're one of the companies in the US that's trying to patent, is that the right word, basically like legalize a
They have one of the
psilocybin.
more controversial patent strategies.
Oh, what is the controversy?
Uh, that they have quite a breadth to their patent attempts.
Mm,
They
mm.
attempted to patent like certain lighting and like music in a room. This was years ago. I don't know if they've
Yeah,
like because it failed. People were like, "You cannot do this."
right.
Luckily, so I don't know if they've like learned their lesson or not. But yeah, I mean,
Corporation.
they're operating in a system that is broken, and you do what you must. I guess I don't know. There's always a balance, but go on.
Yeah. But she was no longer with Compass. I forget what
Hmm.
the name of her company was in Ireland now, but they were
Yeah.
doing clinical trials. And she had, on her own journey, had recently gotten into Celtic shamanism, which is like the
Wow.
traditional Irish lineage, right? Yeah. So
People are
she's
so
like,
cool.
I know. So she's like, I've been speaking to like the
uh,
fairies and the trees and the hills of Ireland, and that's not something I was doing a few years ago. And she's like, so now I'm in this really interesting, and it's like, I think for me, the biggest thing, and of course I see this because personally this was one of my biggest fears, right? So it's like I can see it in other people because, yeah, but it's how, when you know something, right, when you are like, the my Celtic lineage is speaking to me in from the beyond in a divine way, and now I'm working for this company, this corporation that is trying to, yes, help people, but also structure this and create, and open, when you're talking about psychedelics, it's like you're talking about opening people's consciousness to all of this, and there's a responsibility there. And if you're blind to it, like, ignorance is bliss, right? It's like you can't, yes, of course harm can be done, but if you don't know the harm that you can do, there isn't as much like energetic damage, I guess, that can be done. But the second you realize the massiveness of what it is that you're working with, all of a sudden there's a responsibility to hold it in that way. And so to be on the inside of a company being like, okay, we're trying to figure this out, and the company wants to do things a certain way because that's what makes sense, but now all of a sudden you are like, okay, but the Celtic fairies are telling me these things that need to like, how do you bring that into your board meeting?
yeah.
People are trying to figure it out, and it's just like, yeah, that's a real bind to be in, but it
Yeah.
needs to be happening. And so she's like, I'm just trying to drop little seeds of kind of like expansion, and maybe there's more, and it's just things like that within the consciousnesses that she has access to on a day-to-day work sphere. It's like, okay, yeah,
The fairies need a seat on the board.
the fairies need to see
Um,
on the board.
I have an interesting corollary for this. Someone I met at the Bali meditation retreat
Mm.
has like a water business of some sort. He's
That
from New
should
Zealand.
be an oxymoron, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the Lorax, you know. Um, he lives in New Zealand, and one of the things he mentioned to me was that he's making the environment, like the planet, a board member, like giving it
Mm.
voting rights, and that his investors are like perhaps unsurprisingly not about that. I don't know. I mean, it would depend on the investors,
I
but
like roll my eyes like idiots, but like, I mean, yeah, yeah.
I could see how like logistically it would make things a
Well,
bit interesting, but
did he
I
discuss
like the idea.
how? Of course, yeah. But like, did he discuss how he was communicating with Earth to find out what her opinions were?
We didn't go super deep. I
Okay.
if I had to guess, I mean you don't have to go that deep to know like is
This
blowing
good
up
for
this
her.
mountain like what would Earth say to the
Right, fair.
I don't know how water businesses work, so I really I couldn't tell you how nuanced it is or not.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
fascinating.
Um, yeah. I mean, and it literally needs to be happening, not just in, I mean, obviously a water business, which still, even saying that, I'm like, but
Yeah.
it also comes, the nuts thing, right, is that it's like, water businesses already exist. Nestle has already
Oh yeah.
done horrific things, right? So at a certain point, if we're still operating in a capitalist world, which we are, until we move on to something that is more sustainable and, equitable for the planet and all living creatures. Um that like it almost right now it's like you almost have to be a human that believes in the sanctity of earth and water, creating a water business to then do things differently within the system that
Yeah.
exists. It's like playing by the rules that exist to then change how things are done, and it feels counterintuitive, but it's also just like someone else is going to do it, you know.
Yeah.
um One of the things they were talking, actually I said this to someone while we were talking about just, yeah, ethics and shamanism and all of that. um and then I heard someone say it in a talk like an hour later, but I was just like, someone's going to come out and try to patent like ayahuasca and try to be like, you can't make that. And the person I said it to laughed and was just like, almost in a way that was like, yeah, okay. And then literally,
Dismissive.
like the next talk that I went to, there was a woman from Brazil, a shaman from Brazil, who's also a medical doctor and has done incredible work, like in both of these worlds, right? And a lot on indigenous rights and just all of this stuff, just this like powerhouse of a human being. And she literally was just like, they're going to try to take this away from us. They're going to try to take you know, our medicines, and they're going to try to say that we're not allowed to have them anymore and put patents on them and put laws and labels. And she's like, it might sound crazy, but capitalism will try to find a way to tie our hands from our own. Yeah, I'm like, not to say that that means somebody should patent it who's like a good guy. Like it just, I mean, it shouldn't. Of course, it should not be, but it's also like there need to be as grounded and heart-led people in the game as possible while the game is being played, until the game is no longer played, because if those people aren't coming to the table, they're just going to be completely removed from the table.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. We've seen this before, the capitalism versus like oh, like I love the earth. Like the capitalism wins. You have to play the game because someone has to beat them.
Right.
It is a game. And there's gonna be someone, like you said, that comes in and is like, oh my god, I had this ayahuasca journey and the plants told me that I need to patent ayahuasca and that I'm the chosen one. Like someone's gonna do that,
Right.
and they're gonna have a ton of money, and then people are gonna give them more money, and they're gonna try and do it. And so we need someone to oppose that, to do it in a better way, in a newer way, because capitalism. It's so funny to me. At Lightning in a Bottle, there were actually really cool. I don't know if we've talked about this much yet. There were
Just a
like
little bit.
several, yeah, different
Yeah.
psychedelic workshops that MAPS put on. And during one of them, it was like psychedelics and radical ecology.
Mm.
And one of the people was talking about this like alternative to capitalism that is actually, I guess, has some traction specifically in Europe. I forget what the name of it was. Might have written it down somewhere. But to me, it was just like so silly. Like, I think people miss the point and they misjudge who's in power. Because this guy, he's on stage and he's like, yeah, and then we'll just cap everyone's wealth at $1 million. I'm like, how are you going to do that?
Right,
do you not know that the billionaires are the ones who are making the rules right now, and that they're
right,
laughing when you say that? Like,
right. It's like it's a
it's just
fine
silly.
idea, but
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I love that.
yeah,
But it's not going to happen. So let's
right,
not have that conversation. Let's have a better one. Let's have a
right,
real one, you know?
right,
Let's not be idealistic and we've done that before. It doesn't work. Like, let's
right,
be real.
right.
So it was interesting. And maybe I need to dig deeper into whatever the premise of it is. But even hearing that was like a disqualifier for me. Like, that's just not going to happen,
Right.
you know?
And I think there is merit to having conversations around how systems could be different. And I think there also, yeah, just needs to be a level of it's almost I don't want to say like ignorance isn't the right word, but almost like naivete, I guess. And of course, everybody's understanding and the knowledge that they have and the things they've been exposed to is going to be completely different, and my own included, right? I have 1.5 million blind spots about things that I just don't know about. And sometimes it hits me really hard when I realize how much the average person doesn't seem to understand still
Yeah.
how deep so many of the systems and the powers that be actually run, and how much smoke and mirrors there is around just like, okay, yeah, you think like, yes, we'll just change a law and then everything will be and it's like, no, this goes like it is rotten to the core in so many ways. That's not to say that there aren't good people trying to do good things in certain places, but it's just like I don't actually know how to have a conversation with you if you think that this is as simple as just like a piece of legislation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but yeah,
It's funny that we, or maybe I end up here quite often. I mean, I guess, yeah, it makes sense. I'm living in the States, but the situation's dire. It's been dire, but like, on the legislation front specifically, not even psychedelic related, but there was a bill, I don't know if it was passed or not, but proposed that merges the militaries of the US and Israel at a high level. Like, there's more nuance to it, and they would never say that outright. They would find some disqualifier that says, oh no, that's essentially
right,
what it would do.
right,
And it would also, there was another component of it that would make it so no future elected official could repeal this even if they wanted to without some like extensive additional legislation process. And so it's like looking a bit like the United States of Israel. And it has, like
right.
outwardly, we give them billions of dollars to do the things they're doing. And so yeah, there's been a sense of urgency for me to get out of the States, and there is still a very clear date I have in mind to do so, but it's crazy. It's crazy here.
Yeah. I One of the things that I felt landing even more deeply in myself at the conference actually was just like I I have known my lane and my purpose on this earth for quite some time now.
Yeah.
And I have been acting in accordance with that for quite some time and recognizing that it's like there's just more and more and it gets bigger and wider and deeper as I go. And, there's been a process of kind of letting go of the things that aren't mine, and
Yeah.
that's been years, right, of me
Yeah.
disentangling that. And there's still a few little threads left to go, but for the most part, because I still, like on Sunday, Sunday was the first day that I had where there was just nothing to do for
Yeah.
in a very long time, right? So it's like a little bit of just kind of like rot on the couch and whatever. And for me, like rotting is like what's on Reddit, that'll be good for my brain. Um, and seeing some of the stuff on Reddit about the state of the world and things that are happening, and just being like, I again, it's a fine line of being aware, right,
Yeah.
of what is going on, and also recognizing that I'm like, I know that the way that I save things, that the way that I help is through creating Ari, through
Yeah.
expanding consciousness, through doing that work, through my art, through my poetry, through my writing, through showing up as the version of me that exists doing the work that I do, right? And it's like it actually is counterproductive to my own ends, and which are the collective ends, if
Yeah.
I start getting lost in the like, someone else's purpose is
Yeah.
figuring out politics. Or like figuring that, like, and I'm so glad,
Politics.
just politics, all of it. That's some one other person, that's one person's purpose is figuring.
Yeah, they've got it. They've got it.
um, but like, yeah, that it's just like we've all, I don't know. And again, that's not to say that it's not deeply something that affects me, and like that I want so passionately to change. And like the amount of just kind of like trust in the divine, I guess, and trust in the message that has to be had, to just be like, okay, cool, I don't want there to be any more genocides.
Yeah.
I think, and but the way that I do that is actually through sharing my art and through creating a platform where people can expand their consciousness, heal, and become people who also don't
Do not
believe in
want there to be
genocide.
genocide. Yeah. Yeah.
And so it feels like you're doing work that isn't actually directly related, but it's like if I spent, yeah, I don't know. That,
Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of had this conversation with a loved one recently.
Mm,
And we were talking about, I forget how we even got on the subject, but we were talking about narcissism and like being a good person, and how like most good people, whatever that means, at some point question whether they're a good person.
right.
Like we were talking about, like I had done a reading with someone that was like an intuitive, and like the first thing he said to me was like, wow, like he tapped into the field and was like, you just have such a good heart. And I was like, are you full of shit? Like I didn't say that, but it was like at a
It's not
period
inside me.
I was like, okay, well he doesn't know what he's talking about.
I
I
had
just
a
like
really
hang
big
up.
thought earlier today.
Yeah. Because we are like, I mean, at least I am, and I think maybe you at some points in life have been as well, like our own biggest critics.
Yeah.
And so like this loved one was reflecting back to me that I am a good person, and like all of these qualities that I have. And in it, I forget how, but we got to talking about narcissism and how at different points we have questioned, like we've been with narcissistic people, and
Mhm.
then you end up questioning yourself, like, am I a narcissist as well? Like, why am I
Mhm.
attracting this? Um, and so, like, she had gone down that rabbit hole a bit, and I've gone down it, but I've also been like accused or labeled as that by others.
Ooh.
Um, I know,
That
and it's for yeah, go on.
No, it's just like that'll mess with you.
Totally. And it
Yeah.
was their own projections.
Right.
And a lot of the time it was like I have what I think is a very healthy level of confidence, and that to someone who like confidence and arrogance are like different ends of the spectrum, where it's like
Right.
confidence stems from like self-love and arrogance stems from self-hate. And so being around people who are arrogant and also probably narcissistic, like being in the energy of just like a true confidence that is grounded in not like the money I make or the car I have or any of the stuff that
Mhm.
theirs is grounded in. It's just in like my own being. I think that can be jarring for people, and that's like
Mhm.
I'm grateful that has been my state of being for like many years now. I've fluctuated and wavered, but that's just like who I am, and so that's been hard for people in my life at times. Um, but yeah, we were going down this rabbit hole, and I was like, yeah, I've wondered if I was narcissistic too. And then she was like, no, you're not. You have, and she like started to say that I have empathy, but then she caught herself and she's like, I actually don't know if I've seen that from you. And that being said, we've only known each other for like a month, and she didn't say it in like a critical way,
Right,
but
right,
just in
right.
like I logistically or like statistically, I don't know if that is an emotion or a state of being that you've expressed. And I mean, I think it like someone else might be offended by that or be like,
Right.
"What? Like no, I had empathy this time." But I was like, "No,
Let
like
me get my empathy checklist out for
yeah,
you.
literally the like scoreboard." But for me I'm like, "Yeah, no, empathy exists within me as an option. Like I can make
Mhm.
that choice to have that feeling. However, 9 times out of 10, maybe 99 times out of 100 even, I'm choosing compassion.
Yeah.
Because empathy, me feeling the emotions of that person alongside them, does not serve them. It doesn't take the emotions away from them. If anything, it heightens it. And then we're
Right.
both spiraling. And how am I supposed to help them when I'm spiraling with them?
Right.
You know, people think that having empathy, being an empath, like they think that it helps everyone else, but it really it can, but it doesn't by default, you
Right.
know? Like compassion is what I strive for because in having compassion, I can understand and relate to and like feel for those people without feeling what they are feeling because that would immobilize me. If I felt all of the pain in the world, which I could, I wouldn't be able to do any of this that is helping
Right.
to alleviate the pain. It's just like, I don't know. And no shade to people with empathy and who choose to have empathy. Like, it's a beautiful thing and someone has to do it. But for me, it's like, if I want to move at the pace I'm moving and to like build the things I'm building, it has to be compassion.
Right. No, it's funny. Like as you started sharing all of that, I was like thinking about my own take on you and just being like, is
Mm,
empathetic. I was like, think of, getting my own checklist out of just being like times that I've seen Kian be empathetic. And like, is that a word that I would use to describe you? And like, yeah, I mean, not that I was like, no, you're not
yeah,
that, but also there wasn't a giant list that came to mind, right? And it is like, but I know that you have that. I know you are deeply compassionate and deeply feeling for the suffering of others and that you can see it and you can hold it. But yeah, like I've never, maybe I shouldn't say never, but like rarely seen you, I know you'll use the analogy, right, of like getting in somebody's digging a hole. Is it you use this or am I thinking of my dad? An honor
go.
if I'm conflating both the two, right?
Yeah, thank
Where it's
you.
like
Either way.
if someone is stuck in a hole, right?
Uh-huh.
And like you get down into the hole and hoist them out. And now they're going to be standing on the edge of the hole and they're going to be like, cool, thanks. And they walk
Yeah.
away. And now you're stuck in the hole. And it's like, okay, no, like what we actually do is we stay out of the hole, we extend our arm and we help the person get out of the hole, but we don't need to get into the hole with them. Um, yeah, and I feel like you have a beautiful way of doing that. Um, and of course, it's going to be different for all beings. Like I think so much of my own journey has been learning how to separate those things out, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm a deeply feeling being and I that's where I connect with so many people is, being able to actually see them in some of the like emotional states and places that a lot of people have never been met at.
Yeah.
And for me learning how to be like, okay, I can see you in the like deepest depths of despair while also holding myself at an energetic distance and not feeling
Yeah.
that with you, but letting you know that I have felt it and I see it and I hold it, but I'm not getting in that hole anymore because it's not my hole, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Another interesting variable is that like I have been with and spent like years of my life with in different senses, like in friendships and intimate relationships, people who would consider themselves empaths.
Mm.
And there's so much beauty in that, but there's also so much pain in both directions. Some
Mm-hmm.
of the worst things that have ever been done to me have been done by empaths. Most of them, truthfully, because they get so hurt that then it's like hurt people, and they get these like blinders on. Yeah, the snip, the
Yeah.
crab.
Well,
Yeah.
like not to pin it all on the cancers, but
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
my god. Yeah.
but
But to pin
yeah,
it all on the
they're
kid.
we love them, but yeah, they're pinchy.
We love them, but do they love them?
I don't know.
They're still figuring that one out.
Hilarious. Have I told you that one of like my deepest, like most loved humans on this earth is a triple cancer?
Oof.
She literally like I love her so much, and I'm like I as someone who feels more than anyone has ever felt, I just like I look at her and I'm like, oh my god, like I can't. And she's just the most beautiful being, but she
Yeah.
feels everything, and that's her journey, right? But it's just like, whoa, that's a lot to have been. That those are some signs for sure.
Yeah, the Cancer moon in particular is, I mean, it's where the moon is most at home. Like it's so powerful, but
Mm,
in that power comes so much work. It could be play.
yeah.
Ideally, it's play, but it's usually both. But yeah, I mean, that was part of my journey was accepting, first recognizing, and then accepting that like I can't help someone. You know, I can't fix someone. I can't do the work for them when the work is internal, you know?
Yeah.
And that's like such a weight off the shoulders too, where it's like knowing the limit, knowing the boundary of like what is yours to hold. Because I'm
Yeah.
the Aquarius, like I'm the water bearer. I was so quick to like, and still am, like I see any hint of emotion or water, I'm like, let me hold that for you. Like,
Mm,
do you want a vase? I have a nice vase you can exist in for a bit. But sometimes, yeah, the vase isn't big enough, you know?
sometimes the vase isn't big enough.
And it's not meant to carry water at all times.
Sometimes we gotta chop wood and then we carry water, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.